Yesterday, the house went silent again. No footsteps upstairs. No dishes clinking in the sink. Just the low hum of the refrigerator. And that old radio on the counter, turned off since the funeral. It's strange how noise becomes memory. Her laughter used to fill every corner. The way she'd hum while frying eggs or talk to the coffee pot like it was listening. Now it's just me. And the sound of rain tapping the kitchen window. My son hasn't said a word in 21 days. He walks through the rooms like a ghost that's still learning how to haunt. I tried talking. At first, small things. Like asking if he wanted toast. He'd nod, take a bite, and vanish upstairs again. I stopped pushing. Silence became our truce. Sometimes I think grief chooses its own language. For him, it's quiet. For me, it's this need to keep something running. An engine, a clock, anything that ticks. So I've been spending nights in the garage, fixing up my wife's old truck. The one she loved riding in when the weather turned. The smell of oil and rust helps me breathe. There's a coffee mug she used to leave by the passenger door, chipped at the rim, stained inside. I keep it there still. Maybe it's stupid, but every time I see it, it feels like she might walk in, grab it, and say, "You made it too strong again, Bob." The boy used to sit beside her during those drives. Windows down, her hand on his shoulder, radio playing some old country tune she knew every word to. He'd laugh at her when she sang off-key. I used to think we had forever to laugh about it. Tonight, the rain's heavier. The kind that makes you feel like the sky's got something to say. I sat at the table after midnight, nursing cold coffee, staring at that radio. It hasn't played since the day after we buried her. I couldn't stand hearing her songs anymore. But something in the quiet pulled me closer. I brushed off the dust, turned the dial. Static. Then a low hum. I adjusted the knob again just for a second. And that's when I heard it. A voice. Soft. Familiar. Faint. Like a breath caught in static. "Bub." I froze. My hands trembled on the dial. The voice was gone as quick as it came, swallowed by the hiss. But it was her. I swear, it was her. I looked up, half expecting my son to be standing in the doorway. But the stairs stayed dark. Just the rain, and my own heartbeat. For a long time I sat there listening to nothing, trying to decide if grief can make sound. Then, almost like the house was listening, the radio clicked again by itself. A low hum, then a whisper. This time, it wasn't my name. It was a tune. Her tune. The one she used to hum on Sunday mornings. And upstairs I heard the floor creak. I didn't move. Just sat there, coffee gone cold in my hands, listening to that faint melody drift through the static. The radio shouldn't have been on. I'd switched it off, pulled the damn plug even. But there it was, humming that tune like it remembered her better than I did. Upstairs, another creak. Slow this time. Deliberate. My son's door opening. "Eli?" I called, voice catching in my throat. No answer. Only the sound of bare feet on the stairs. Then he appeared thin, pale, hair hanging over his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. The melody faded just as he reached the bottom step. He stood there, staring past me, toward the radio. "You hear that?" I asked quietly. He nodded. First movement I'd seen in weeks. Then his lips parted. Just enough to breathe, but no words came out. His eyes shimmered, like he was afraid of something he couldn't name. I turned to the radio, hand hovering over the dial. The static crackled again, rising and falling like someone trying to speak through rain. "Dad," he whispered. It was the first word he'd said since the funeral. I looked at him, this boy who'd shut the world out, who'd stopped eating, stopped laughing. His voice was thin, but real. "What is it, son?" He swallowed, eyes fixed on the radio. "It's her song." Then he sat down at the table, same chair she always used. I didn't tell him to. Just watched as he leaned forward, elbows on the wood, head tilted like he was waiting for her to finish. We stayed that way for a while, both of us listening to static and rain. I didn't dare turn it off. Didn't even breathe too loud. When the song ended, silence rushed back in like a wave. Eli's fingers started tracing circles on the table. He used to do that as a kid when he couldn't sleep. His mother would draw circles over his hand until he drifted off. "She used to play that song," he whispered finally. "I know," I said. "Every morning." He nodded, still tracing those invisible circles. "Do you think she's trying to talk to us?" I wanted to tell him no, that it was just interference, or a memory trick. But something in me hesitated. Because I'd heard her say my name. I knew that voice. "Maybe," I said. He looked up at me for the first time in weeks. His eyes were wet, but steady. "I miss her." My throat tightened. "Me too, buddy." The radio clicked again. Once. Twice. Then went silent. The light on its dial flickered out. Eli stood, quiet as a shadow. "Can we leave it on?" "Yeah," I said softly. "We'll leave it." He turned, headed for the stairs. Halfway up, he stopped. "Dad?" "Yeah?" He hesitated. "If it plays again, will you wake me?" I nodded. "I will." He disappeared into the dark, the floorboards creaking just once more before settling. I sat there until the clock hit 2:17. Rain still falling steady against the glass. The truck outside, ticking as its metal cooled. Then, through the hiss of quiet, the radio gave one last soft breath, like someone sighing on the other end of memory. And for the first time since the funeral, I whispered back, "Good night, sweetheart." Morning came gray and slow, the kind that feels like the world's been muted. The rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low enough to scrape the roof. I made coffee the way she used to, 2 scoops, 1 stir counterclockwise. I never understood why she cared about that, but now it felt wrong to do it any other way. The radio sat silent on the counter, a small brown box with a burn mark along the top. I kept glancing at it, waiting for it to breathe again. It didn't. Just sat there. Same as always. Eli came down late, still wearing the sweatshirt he'd slept in. He didn't look at me at first, just poured himself cereal, slow and careful. The spoon clinked against the bowl, sound I hadn't heard in weeks. "You sleep any?" I asked. He shrugged. "Some." I waited, not wanting to scare the words away. Then soft, he said, "I dreamed about her." I looked up. "Yeah?" He nodded, eyes on the cereal. "She was sitting by the window, like she used to. The one by the garden. She said, 'Don't let him forget.'" I froze. "Forget what?" He looked up then, and for a second, he was the little boy again, hair sticking up, eyes wide with something between wonder and fear. "She didn't say, just smiled." Then I woke up. We sat in silence a while. The clock ticked on the wall. My coffee went cold again. After breakfast, he went outside. I watched him from the kitchen window, walking through the wet grass toward the truck. He opened the door on her side, stared inside for a long time. Then he sat there, like he was waiting for her to climb in too. Something inside me twisted. I grabbed my jacket and stepped out into the cold. The air smelled of wet earth and old leaves. When I reached the truck, he didn't look at me. His fingers were running along that chipped coffee mug she'd left. "She always forgot to bring it in," he said quietly. I smiled a little. "She said it made the truck smell like mornings." He nodded, brushing a thumb along the rim. "Can we drive it? Just around town?" The question caught me off guard. He hadn't asked to go anywhere since she passed. "Sure," I said after a moment. "Let me grab the keys." He smiled, small, tired, but real. We drove slow through town. The streets were still wet. Storefronts fogged from the night before. Nobody said much. But the radio hummed softly between stations. A ghost in the static. Halfway down Main Street, the hum shifted clearer this time. A few faint notes of the same tune from last night. Eli turned to me, eyes wide. "Dad." I reached for the dial, but he grabbed my hand. "Don't," he whispered. We let it play. Just a few bars. Then silence. When it stopped, he leaned back, whispering, "She's still with us." I didn't argue. Didn't need to. We drove on in silence. The road ahead glistening with the memory of rain. Back home, he didn't go straight upstairs. He lingered at the table, glanced at the radio once, then said softly, "Maybe we should keep listening." I nodded. Maybe we should. And for the first time in 22 days, I heard him hum. That night, the air in the house felt different. Not heavy, not haunted, just listening. Eli had gone to bed early, but I could hear him moving around upstairs. Maybe he couldn't sleep. Maybe he was waiting. Same as me. I sat at the kitchen table again, the radio in front of me. Its wooden sides were cracked and worn. The kind of old you can't fake. I'd fixed 100 things in my life, engines, wiring, even that leaky roof. But I never once opened this radio. She said it had a soul. And I believed her. When we first bought it, she was pregnant with Eli. We were still young enough to think everything lasted forever. I remember her tuning through stations, laughing when the static popped. "Sounds like angels trying to get a word in," she'd say. I missed that laugh more than I could stand, so I turned the dial again. Just a small click. The speakers hissed soft, then sharper, like wind through dry leaves. Then, silence. For a moment, I thought it was over. But faintly, from somewhere deep inside the static, came a voice. "Bob?" I froze. My throat went dry. "Bob, can you hear me?" It was her again. Softer this time. Almost tender. Like she was leaning close. "I'm here," I whispered, not caring how foolish it sounded. "I'm here." The signal cracked, fading in and out. "Take care of him." Then the radio went dead. I sat there a long time, heart pounding. The sound of rain starting again outside. It wasn't a storm, just a quiet drizzle, the kind that seeps into your bones. I picked up the radio, turned it over. The cord was still unplugged. My hands started to shake. I took a breath, steadying myself. Maybe it was a recording from some late-night broadcast, maybe a trick of the wiring. But deep down, I knew better. I carried the radio to the garage. The air smelled of oil and rain-soaked concrete. My tools were scattered where I'd left them. A socket wrench resting on the hood of the truck. I set the radio on the workbench and plugged it in. The light flickered once, then held steady. "All right," I muttered. "Let's see what you're hiding." I unscrewed the back panel and lifted it carefully. Inside was dust, wires, and tucked behind one of the coils, a small cassette. My breath caught. I hadn't seen one in years. The label was almost rubbed off, but I could still make out the handwriting, for Bob. Sunday morning. My chest tightened. That was her handwriting. The tape deck inside the radio wasn't meant for cassettes. It had no slot, no player. She must have hidden it there herself. I held it under the light, shaking my head. What were you trying to tell me, sweetheart? I wiped my hands on a rag and went searching through the drawers. Old tools, screws, a cracked flashlight. Then an old cassette player I hadn't used since the shop closed. I popped the tape in, pressed play. At first just static. Then her voice filled the garage. Hey Bob, if you're hearing this, I guess I'm gone. My knees went weak. I wanted to leave something. For you and Eli. Something that sounds like home. I sank onto the stool, the hum of the truck filling the silence between her words. Promise me one thing, she said. Keep talking to him, even when he won't talk back. One day, he'll need to hear your voice. The tape clicked off. Outside, the rain slowed to a gentle rhythm, tapping on the roof like her fingers once did on my arm. And for the first time in years, I cried without hiding. I don't remember falling asleep in the garage, but the morning light found me slumped over the workbench. My hands still rested on that cassette player, the tape halfway unspooled inside. The air was cool, thick with that smell of rain-damp wood and motor oil. For a second, I thought I'd dreamed it all, her voice, her message, every word. But the player was still on. The play button pressed down halfway, like the world had paused with it. Eli's footsteps came from the doorway behind me. He was barefoot, hoodie zipped up to his chin, hair messy and eyes half awake. Dad? He said quietly. You didn't come to bed. I looked up at him, throat dry. I know. I was fixing something. He nodded toward the tape player. Was that her? I didn't know how he knew, but I didn't lie. Yeah, it was. He stepped closer, the way you approach a wild animal that might spook. Can I hear it? I hesitated, thumb brushing the worn edge of the cassette. It's not easy to listen to. He looked at me, steady this time. Neither is silence. So I rewound it. The little wheels spun, clicking softly, like time reversing itself, just enough for another chance. I pressed play. Her voice filled the room again, warm, trembling, alive. Hey Bob, if you're hearing this, I guess I'm gone. Eli stiffened beside me. Tears hit his sleeve before he could hide them. She went on, voice crackling through the years. You always said you'd fix everything one day. But maybe some things aren't meant to be fixed, just loved. Her laugh followed, soft and tired. The kind you make after a long day. Tell Eli I'm proud of him, even when he doesn't know what to say. Especially then. The tape clicked, hummed, then stopped. Eli just stood there, staring at the player like it had opened a door he wasn't ready to walk through. She knew, he whispered. She knew I'd stop talking. I wiped my face with a rag. Maybe she didn't know, son. Maybe she just understood us too well. He didn't answer. Just pressed the rewind button again. I let it spin. I didn't stop him. When her voice played the second time, he mouthed the words along with her, every pause, every little breath. Something inside me cracked open. When it ended, I said quietly, we can keep it out here if you want. Play it when you need to. He shook his head. No. It should stay in the house, where she used to sing, so we carried it in together. He held the radio like it was something sacred. We set it on the kitchen counter, right where it always Saturday. The rain had started again, light against the window. Eli turned the dial once. Just once. Static. Then a familiar hum. "Morning, Mom," he whispered, and for the first time in a long while, his voice didn't sound like it was breaking. That afternoon, the sky cleared for the first time in weeks. The sunlight came soft, like it didn't want to startle us. The kitchen windows fogged with the warmth of it, and the air smelled faintly of wet grass and coffee. Eli was at the table, sketching something in his old notebook. He used to draw cars, mostly trucks like mine, but today it was something different. I saw the lines, gentle and curved, shaping into her face. His mother. He hadn't drawn her since she passed. I kept quiet, letting the pencil move. The scratch of graphite against paper filling the room. The radio sat beside him, silent but present, like it was watching over us. After a while, I poured 2 cups of coffee. One for me, one for the spot across from him. The habit still lingered. He noticed. "You still make one for her?" he asked. I nodded. "Old habits. They keep the air warm." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes but tries to. She'd like that. We sat there in a kind of peace I hadn't felt in months. Outside, the road steamed as the sun dried the rain. A bird landed on the fence, shaking its wings free. Life, somehow, was still moving. Then, around noon, the radio crackled again. Just once. A soft pulse of static, like a sigh caught between worlds. Eli froze mid-sketch. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "Yeah," I said. "Just static." But then it came again. A slow hum rising into a faint melody. Not her voice this time. Just music, drifting through the interference like something half-remembered. Eli turned the dial slightly. The sound sharpened. A piano now, low and wavering. "That's the song she used to play in church," he said. I nodded. She always said it made her feel closer to God. The melody continued. Broken but beautiful. I could almost picture her hands on the keys, head tilted, eyes closed. Then a click. Silence. Eli sat back, staring at the radio. "It's not just her voice, Dad. It's like she's picking the moments." I looked at him carefully. "What do you mean?" He frowned, thinking. "When we need it most, that's when it plays." I didn't have an answer for that. Maybe he was right. Maybe the world works in ways too quiet to understand. That night, after dinner, we stayed at the table long after the dishes were done. The radio stayed quiet, but the silence didn't hurt anymore. It felt full, somehow, like waiting for a friend to call, knowing they eventually will. Eli finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, do you think we should record something? For her?" I looked up. "You mean like a message?" He nodded. "Yeah. So if she's really out there, she'll know we're okay." I didn't laugh, didn't question it. I just nodded. "All right, we can do that." He smiled for the first time in a long while, really smiled. "Tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," I said, after he went to bed. I sat by the window, listening to the faint ticking of my watch and the whisper of the breeze through the trees. And I swear, for just a second, I heard her voice drift through the static of the night air. Not words this time, just laughter. Soft, familiar, free. The next morning started with light instead of rain. The air was cool, carrying that faint smell of wet pine and fresh earth. I stood by the window, coffee steaming in my hand, watching Eli set up the old tape recorder on the kitchen table. He was focused, quiet, a little nervous. "You sure you want to do this now?" I asked. He nodded without looking up. If we wait, I'll change my mind. He'd found the recorder in a box under the stairs, the one she used to record her songs for the church choir. It still had her handwriting on the side. Sunday practice. Don't erase. He pressed the red button halfway down, testing the click. You remember how to use this thing? Barely, I said, smiling. You talk into it. Hope it listens. He looked up, half a grin forming. Like people, huh? Yeah, I said quietly. Exactly like people. He sat there a moment, staring at the mic. Then he took a deep breath and hit record. The little reels began to spin, slow and steady. Hi, Mom, he started. His voice was fragile at first, like he wasn't sure it would hold. It's been a while. We're okay, I think. He paused, glancing at me. I gave him a nod to keep going. Dad fixed your truck, he said softly. We drove it last week. It still smells like your coffee mug. I looked down, throat tightening. He smiled faintly. You'd like it here today. The yard's green again. I cleaned your garden. The reels clicked, his voice catching on something invisible. I still hear you sometimes, he whispered. Through the radio. Through things I can't explain. He stopped, wiped his eyes with his sleeve, then laughed quiet, broken, but real. I hope that's you, Mom. I really do. He leaned over and clicked stop. The silence after was soft, but not empty. I cleared my throat. Mind if I say something too? He slid the recorder across the table. Go ahead. I pressed record. Took a long breath. The hum of the old refrigerator filled the background. The kind of sound that never goes away, but you only notice when you need comfort. Hey, sweetheart, I began. My voice cracked on the first word. We've been getting by. The boy's growing. You'd be proud of him. He's got your eyes when he looks out the window too long. I paused, pressing my thumb against the side of the mic like it could feel me there. I'm sorry for all the things I never said. For the quiet I let sit too long between us. I should have held you tighter that last morning. A long breath. I still keep your mug by the truck. Feels like you might come for it any minute. The recorder clicked softly as I ended it. Eli watched me, eyes shining. We sat there a long while, the two of us, letting the message settle into the air. Then he said, We should play it for her. How? I asked. He pointed at the radio. Through there. I stared at the old box on the counter, wondering if it could really listen the way we hoped. All right, I said finally. Let's see if the world still got room for miracles. That night, we played the tape into the static, and for the first time, the radio answered. It began with a flicker, a small pulse of light across the radio dial. Then a low hum deep enough to rattle the coffee mugs on the counter. Eli and I sat there in the dim kitchen, our recorded voices still echoing faintly from the tape player. The air felt charged, like right before a thunderstorm. The hum grew stronger. Static hissed, then thinned out into a soft, trembling silence. And through that quiet came something that made my heart stop. Her voice. Clear, gentle, close. My boys. Eli gasped. His hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles went white. I couldn't breathe. Every cell in me wanted to believe, but fear wrapped around my ribs like wire. The voice continued, soft as wind through tall grass. I heard you, Eli whispered. Mom? The radio crackled, a pause, then laughter. The same light, quiet laugh that used to drift through Sunday mornings when she burned the toast. Eli broke down then. shoulders shaking, tears spilling silently. I reached for his hand, and for the first time, he didn't pull away. "Keep talking," the voice said, fading in and out. "Don't stop." Then the sound twisted static again, waves of interference. The light on the dial flickered twice and died. The house fell silent. Only the ticking of my old wristwatch filled the space. Eli looked at me, eyes wide and wet. "That was her. Dad, tell me. That was her." I wanted to say yes, but my voice wouldn't come. My mouth opened, closed. Nothing. He pushed back from the table, trembling. "She said she heard us." He was right. And somehow, that scared me more than if he'd been wrong. I unplugged the radio just to be sure. No hum. No spark. Nothing. Eli wiped his face, pacing now. "We have to record again. Maybe she'll slow down," I said softly. "Let's breathe first." He stopped, looked at me like I'd missed the point. "You don't understand," she answered. I did understand. That was the problem. We sat there for a long time, the two of us staring at that old box like it might start glowing again. It didn't. Finally, I said, "She told us not to stop talking. So we won't. Not to her, and not to each other. Deal?" He nodded slowly, his breathing steadied. "Deal." I got up, poured us both some water. My hands still trembled as I set the glasses down. Outside, thunder rolled far away, just a low, tired growl across the horizon, the kind that comes after too much rain. That night, after Eli went to bed, I sat by the radio again. The kitchen smelled of coffee and dust, same as always. I thought about what she'd said. Don't stop talking, so I didn't. I told her about the truck's new brakes, about how Eli was drawing again, about the smell of her garden coming back after the rain. The static was silent, but somehow, it didn't feel empty. At 12:03, just as I was about to stand, a single word whispered through the hum, "Promise." And before I could answer, the house went dark. The power outage didn't last long, but those few seconds of darkness felt endless. The only sound was the ticking of my watch, faint under the rain starting again outside. Then, one by one, the lights blinked back on. The fridge hummed, the clock restarted. The radio stayed dark. I stood there, breathing hard, trying to convince myself I hadn't imagined it. That single word still echoed in my head. Promise. When I went to check on Eli, he was sitting up in bed, flashlight on, sketchbook open. He looked up the second I stepped in. "The power went out," I said quietly. "I know," he replied. I wasn't scared. He'd drawn something, a shape that looked like sound waves, curling and looping like ripples in water. "What's that?" I asked. He smiled faintly. Her voice. I sat on the edge of the bed. "You think she's trying to tell us something?" He nodded. "Yeah. And I think it's about you." "Me?" He turned the notebook around, pointing to the words scrawled in the middle. "Promise." I didn't say anything for a while. My throat tightened, just seeing it written there. "Before she passed," I said slowly, "she made me promise I'd keep the house, keep the truck running, keep things normal." Eli looked down. "That's not what she meant." His voice had changed, not the fragile whisper it used to be, steadier. "Sure. What do you think she meant?" He shrugged, but his eyes held something certain. "She meant not to disappear." That hit harder than I wanted to admit. I'd spent weeks disappearing into work. Silence. Anything that didn't sound like her name. "Guess I broke that one," I murmured. Eli didn't argue, just reached over, closed the notebook, and set it aside. "Can we sleep downstairs tonight?" he asked. "Down here?" "Yeah," he said. "Near the radio." I thought about it, then nodded. "Sure." We grabbed blankets, made a small nest on the floor near the kitchen table. The rain was steady now, whispering against the glass. Eli fell asleep first, head resting on his sketchbook. I stayed awake, listening not for thunder, not for her voice, just for anything. Around 2 in the morning, I heard it again. A low hum from the unplugged radio. The dial light flickered once, faint blue this time, and the hum deepened. I leaned close, heart pounding. "Sweetheart?" Static answered. Then, faintly, a melody, no words, just her humming. The same tune she'd hum while folding laundry. Slow and tender. I closed my eyes, tears pressing behind them. When it faded, the silence that followed felt different. Not lonely, more like peace. I looked over at Eli, fast asleep, one hand still touching the edge of the radio, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel afraid of morning. I felt ready, because maybe the real promise wasn't about the house or the truck. Maybe it was about finding our way back to the sound of living. And somewhere inside that silence, I whispered, "I promise." Morning came quiet again, all gray light and low clouds. The storm had passed, leaving everything damp and shining. You could smell earth, wet paint, and the faint scent of burnt dust from the old heater kicking back to life. Eli was still asleep on the floor beside the radio, his hair sticking up like a small bird's nest. The hum of the house felt gentler, now less hollow somehow. I made coffee, careful not to wake him. The sound of the percolator bubbled through the stillness, and it hit me how long it had been since I'd done that without thinking of her. The radio stayed dark, but I could almost feel it watching. I set a cup near it anyway. Old habits. When Eli woke, he stretched, rubbing his eyes. "Did she say anything last night?" I smiled. "Yeah. She hummed that song you liked." He sat up slowly, blinking. "You mean the laundry song?" "That's the one." He smiled, soft and crooked. "She always said humming helped her think." "Guess it helps her now too," I said. We spent the morning fixing small things around the house, loose cabinet hinges, a squeaky door, that leaky faucet that had been dripping since spring. I let Eli help, even when it meant redoing half his work. He didn't seem to mind. At one point he asked, "Dad, do you think she knows what we're doing?" "I hope so," I said, tightening the wrench. "She always did love watching us pretend we knew what we were doing." He laughed at that. A real laugh, quick, bright, and gone too fast. But it filled the room just long enough to make the world feel okay. By afternoon, the clouds broke open, and sunlight spilled through the kitchen window. It hit the radio's wooden frame, warming it like a small blessing. "Maybe she sent that," Eli said, nodding toward the light. "Wouldn't surprise me," I said. We ate dinner together that night. Pasta. Nothing special. But it was the first meal in months that didn't taste like absence. Afterward, I went out to the garage for a while. The truck sat waiting, dust catching the last of the evening light. The mug was still in the passenger seat, rim chipped, handle cracked. I ran my thumb along the edge and smiled. "You were right," I whispered. "He's coming back to me." Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. Not loud, just a soft reminder that rain never really leaves. It just rests. When I walked back into the house, Eli was sitting cross-legged on the floor, sketchbook open. He looked up and said, "I drew something." He turned it around. It was the truck, parked under a sky full of swirling lines. Not clouds, but sound waves. And inside the cab, 3 faint figures. "That's you," he said, pointing. "That's me." I swallowed hard. "And her?" He nodded. "Yeah. She's not gone. She's just in the air around us." I didn't trust my voice, so I just put a hand on his shoulder. That night, before we turned in, I noticed something new. The radio's dial light faint, but glowing again. I leaned close, listening. No voice this time, just the sound of quiet breathing, and maybe that was enough. The next morning, the world smelled like rain-soaked wood and cut grass. The kind of smell that carries memory. I stood at the doorway watching Eli load his backpack. He'd decided to go back to school. He didn't say much about it. Just slipped his sketchbook inside and tied his shoelaces tighter than they needed to be. "You sure you're ready?" I asked. He looked up. "I don't think anyone's ever ready. You just go." That sounded like something she would have said. I smiled, pretending not to feel my throat closing up. The bus rumbled up the road, tires hissing against wet pavement. He slung the strap over his shoulder and hesitated at the steps. "Dad? Yeah? If she talks again, tell her I said thanks." I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "I will." When the bus disappeared down the hill, the house felt too still again. The kind of quiet that tests you. I walked back to the kitchen, poured another cup of coffee, and sat across from the radio. The light on the dial was dim but steady. "You heard him," I said softly. "He's trying." Nothing answered, but I didn't expect it to. Sometimes silence says enough. I turned the radio gently, tracing the grooves along its side. The wood was warm to the touch, warmer than it should have been, like it held its own pulse. A thought came to me then, half memory, half something else. Years ago, before Eli was born, she'd told me that radios were like people, they only pick up what they're tuned to. "You keep turning the dial wrong," she used to tease. "You gotta listen softer." So I did. I listened softer. At first, there was nothing but faint static. Then, a whisper too soft to make out. I leaned closer. "Time," the word barely formed, like it had drifted from another century. I turned the dial a hair's width. "Take your time." My breath caught. It was her voice, low and calm. The same tone she used when I'd get lost fixing things that didn't need fixing. I sat back, whispering, "I'm trying." The radio hummed again, faint and steady. Then, suddenly, it stopped. The dial light went out, but something else filled the room, a sound I hadn't heard in so long it broke me open. It was Eli's laughter, faint through the open window as the bus turned the corner, mixing with the morning air. I closed my eyes, let it wash through the cracks. The radio didn't need to say another word. She'd gotten through. Somehow, she'd reached him. When he came home that afternoon, his shoes were muddy, his cheeks red from the wind. "I'm hungry," he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Good," I said, smiling. "That's a start." After dinner, he asked if we could play the tape again. I told him we'd save it for Sunday. That night, as the house settled and the rain started up once more, I caught myself whispering to the quiet, "Take your time." "Yeah, I hear you." And for the first time in months, the ache in my chest felt almost like peace. Sunday came with fog curling low over the fields. The air smelled of wet soil and coffee grounds. I woke before the alarm, sat on the edge of the bed for a while, listening to the steady tick of my old watch. Downstairs, the house was still, the kind of still that feels respectful, like it knows what day it is. Eli was already at the table when I came down, sketchbook open, radio beside him. He'd drawn her again, this time smiling, sitting in that same old truck seat, one hand on the mug. "She looks happy," I said softly. "She is," he replied. "I think Sundays make her feel close." He slid the drawing toward me. The lines were gentle, tender. "We said we'd play the tape today," he reminded. I nodded. "Yeah, let's do it right." We made coffee first. 2 mugs. One for me, one for her. Old ritual. Then I opened the curtains to let the foggy light in, pale, soft, forgiving. Eli placed the tape in the player, his hands careful, reverent almost. He pressed play. Her voice filled the kitchen again, and it felt different this time. Fuller. Like the house itself was breathing with her. "Hey Bob, hey Eli. If you're hearing this, you're probably missing me. That's all right. I'm missing you too." Eli smiled through tears. "Hi, Mom." Her voice continued, faint crackles between words. "I hope you still sing, Eli. And Bob, you better not let that truck sit too long. Machines need to move. People do, too." I laughed, choked halfway through it. "She never let me rest," I muttered. Then she said something that made the air go still. "Whatever happens, don't live in the quiet. Fill it. With music, with words, with each other." The tape clicked softly. Eli's lip trembled. "She sounds closer than before." "Yeah," I said, voice low. "Like she's in the room." We let the silence hang a bit. Then I reached for the radio dial. "Let's see if she's listening." Eli nodded, eyes shining. I turned it slowly, just enough for the static to catch, to breathe. At first, nothing. Then, the faintest melody, a hum. Barely there. The same tune she used to hum when she cooked. Eli closed his eyes, whispering along with it. After a minute, the hum faded, replaced by faint radio chatter, strangers' voices crossing the airwaves. But one word carried clear, right through the noise. "Together." Eli gasped. "You heard that, right?" I nodded, feeling a warmth bloom behind my ribs. "Yes, son. I heard." We sat there a long time, just listening to the rain begin again. The kitchen lights glowed soft yellow, the kind of light that forgives the years between what was and what is. When the tape stopped spinning, I reached over and turned off the player. Eli leaned his head against my arm. "Can we do this every Sunday?" I looked down at him. "Yeah, every Sunday." Outside, the fog began to lift, and the sound of distant church bells carried faintly through the air, steady, patient, and real. And for the first time since the funeral, I didn't dread the days ahead. I just wanted to live in the sound of them. The days that followed felt lighter, almost like the house itself was learning how to breathe again. The kitchen no longer echoed. The walls, once heavy with silence, seemed to hum quietly when sunlight passed through the curtains. Eli came home from school each afternoon with stories, small things, but precious. How he'd drawn something for art class. How the teacher smiled when he finally spoke up. He still looked toward the radio sometimes, like checking in on a friend. But he wasn't waiting anymore. One evening he brought me a folded piece of paper. "Can we put this near the radio?" I opened it. Inside was a short note written in pencil. "Mom, we're talking again. You can rest now." I felt my throat tighten. "That's beautiful, son." He shrugged, shy but proud. "She'll hear it." We tucked the note behind the radio, under the small ceramic angel she used to keep on top. The angel had a chipped wing now, but somehow that made it feel more like us. After dinner, I took the truck out for a short drive. The roads were still damp from yesterday's rain. I rolled the window down and let the wind carry through that same tune from the radio, echoing somewhere in the hum of the tires. At a stoplight, I found myself talking out loud. "You did it, honey. He's coming back." The light turned green, and I drove on, feeling the old engine rumble beneath me. The radio inside the cab flickered faintly. Just one spark of blue light. When I got home, Eli was on the porch, sketchbook in his lap. "You took your time," he said. I grinned. "Guess someone told me to." He smiled, flipping the book around. "Look, it was a drawing of the kitchen table, 2 mugs, the radio, and sunlight spilling across both chairs. Above it, he'd written, 'We're okay now.'" I didn't know what to say, so I just pulled him close. His hair smelled like rain and pencil lead, the way it used to when he was little. Later that night, when the house settled into quiet again, I sat alone with the radio. I didn't turn the dial. Didn't need to. Just placed my hand on the wood and whispered, "Thank you." A faint hum answered low, steady, gentle as a heartbeat. And then, through the static, I heard it. A single phrase, soft as breath. "Keep the light on." It stopped me cold. That's what she always said when she was running late, coming home the same words every night for 20 years. "Keep the light on, Bob. I'll find my way." Tears came before I could stop them. I reached over and turned on the small lamp beside the counter. Its glow fell warm across the floor, wrapping everything in gold. "Lights on," I whispered. "You can rest easy now." In the distance, thunder murmured low, fading into the night like a long, tired exhale. And for the first time since she'd gone, I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. The next few weeks slipped by soft and steady, like time had learned a new rhythm. The air smelled of late spring wet dirt, lilacs, and the faint trace of gasoline from the truck idling in the driveway. Every Sunday, Eli and I kept our promise. We'd make coffee, play her tape, and sit by the radio. The ritual wasn't about waiting for her voice anymore. It was about remembering how to live with it. That morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen window, bright and easy. The radio sat quiet on the counter, the small angel above it casting a thin shadow across her old note. Eli reached over and ran his finger along the chipped wing. "Do you think she's really gone now?" I took a sip of coffee, thinking. "Gone?" I said softly. "No. Just moved into the quiet parts." He nodded, thoughtful. "I think I know what you mean. We didn't play the tape right away this time." Instead, Eli flipped open his sketchbook. "I've been working on something," he said. It was a drawing of us sitting at the table, the radio between us, and through the window, a figure in the rain. Not scary, not ghostly, just peaceful. He looked embarrassed. "It's how I see her now." I stared at it a long while, the lines simple but true. "You captured her," I said finally. "That little tilt of her head. You got it." He smiled. "Maybe she helped me." After breakfast, I drove him into town to buy new pencils. The sky hung heavy with that pale blue haze you only see before summer. On the way back, the truck's radio flickered once no sound, just a pulse of light across the dial. Eli noticed it. "She's saying hi." I laughed. "Yeah. Probably telling me to slow down." When we pulled into the driveway, I saw something that stopped me. The porch light. The one I'd left on that night, she said. Keep the light on it was still glowing, even though I'd unplugged the switch weeks ago. Eli followed my gaze. "How's it doing that?" I didn't answer right away. I just smiled. Some things don't need power. They just remember. That evening, the rain returned, soft, warm, and steady. We opened the windows to let the smell drift through the house. Eli sat on the floor sketching again, radio humming faintly beside him. I fixed the clock on the wall, hands ticking in time with the rhythm of the rain. Around 9, the power blinked once, just like it had the night, she said promise. The radio flared bright for a second, then settled. A voice drifted through, not words, just that same humming tune. Eli looked up, smiling through the flickering light. She's still here. Yeah, I said quietly. She's part of the house now. The hum faded, leaving behind the gentle tap of rain on glass and the faint tick of my old watch. I reached across the table, brushed my fingers over the small ceramic angel. The chipped wing caught the light. "Good night, sweetheart," I whispered. And just before the hum faded completely, a soft reply came through so faint I almost thought I imagined it. "Good night, love." Summer came early that year. The rain turned warm, the fields grew wild, and the air filled with the slow hum of cicadas. Life had color again, the kind that creeps back in quietly after loss, like grass pushing through cracks in the driveway. Eli was out back that morning painting the fence white. He had his mother's focus, now that quiet patience that turns even simple work into something sacred. The radio sat on the porch beside him, faint music threading through the air. I leaned on the doorway, coffee in hand. "You missed a spot," I called out. He smiled without looking up. "I'm saving that one for you." We both laughed easy this time. It had been months since laughter didn't sound like breaking. Inside the house felt alive again. The kitchen smelled of toast and sunlight, the clock ticking in rhythm with the world outside. The radio had gone silent for days now, but we didn't mind. It had said what it needed to say. I walked over to it, fingers brushing across its wooden frame. The note we left behind still sat tucked beneath the angel. The paper had curled at the edges, the pencil fading slightly, but the words still held. "Mom, we're talking again. You can rest now." I smiled. "You'd be proud of him," I murmured. "He's finding his way." The light on the dial flickered once. Just once. As if agreeing. I sat at the table, pulling out my old watch from the drawer. The tick was slower now, its hands a little off, but it still worked. She'd given it to me our first Christmas together, said. "Time's just a way of keeping love on schedule." I wound it gently, listening to the click. "We're on time now," I whispered. Outside, Eli called, "Dad, you coming?" "Yeah," I said, standing. "Just a minute." Before heading out, I turned back one last time. The light through the window hit the radio just right, catching the dust in the air like tiny stars. I thought of her then, not as a ghost, not as a voice in static, but as part of the quiet itself. I walked onto the porch, the boards creaking under my boots. Eli handed me a brush. His face flushed from the heat. "Mom would have said we're doing it wrong," he laughed. I dipped the brush in the paint, smiling. "Yeah. And then she'd fix it when we weren't looking." He grinned. And for a moment, I saw her in him. The same spark, the same stubborn hope. We painted until the light faded. The air turned gold, then blue, then soft gray. When the first stars came out, Eli leaned back and said quietly, "Do you think she can still hear us?" I looked up at the night sky. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled once low and gentle like a sigh. "Yeah," I said. "I think she's listening to everything." We packed up our brushes, washed the paint off our hands, and sat on the porch steps. The old radio inside hummed faintly, a whisper caught between stations. Not a message this time. Just the sound of peace. I rested my hand on his shoulder. "You did good, son." He looked over. "So did you, Dad." For a while, we didn't say anything. The night spoke for us. Crickets whined through the trees. The ticking of time, steady and kind. And in that stillness, I heard it one last time, her voice soft as breath drifting through the static of memory. "Keep talking." I smiled, eyes wet, and whispered back, "Always."